Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 214. Today we've got an esteemed guest, premium plugin author, David Kiss.
How's it going, everybody?
Going great. I also want to introduce my co-host, Jonathan Denwood.
Oh, hi there, folks. Looking forward to this interview.
Excellent. And jumping right into it, I want to ask Dave, how did you first get started in web development?
Oh, man. I mean, I could go back to the days where I was building Kool-Aid fan sites in high school. It was always kind of just a hobby for me. I actually have a video production background, and I liked making like skate videos and stuff like that in high school, and I needed somewhere to put them, right? So obviously the internet was a great place to get started there. And so, I'm a broke high school kid and college kid. There's no way to pay somebody else to help me out with that. So it's something I just wanted to get figuring out on my own. I think I just spent enough time on the computer to understand how this stuff works at a pretty early age. And then I guess it wasn't until after college that I realized that you could actually get paid to do that. So it was just kind of this natural evolution of what started off as an interest and a hobby and kind of became a profession.
Definitely. And how did you first get introduced to WordPress?
That's a really good question. I don't have any sort of one way or one moment that clicked for me with WordPress. I think maybe the first client that I had that was using a WordPress site was already established, and I just kind of got thrown into their project and their tech, and I was like, okay, what's this thing all about? And let's see how to use it. So a lot of times, and I kind of believe in that moving forward in that mantra, is that I love to learn, and I love to pull things apart and figure out how they work. And so if I'm thrown into a project and I really don't understand all the tech, I won't make the client believe I do. I'll let them know, hey, I'm willing to figure this out and do my best to make sure that the end result is something that you're pleased with. So a lot of times I'll just jump right into these projects and try to figure out how everything's working. And I think that was probably early on, maybe 2009 or something like that. And I kind of came back around to it after a couple of years. But that's probably where I was first introduced to it.
Excellent. Did you set out to be a web developer? Because you have a degree in film. Is that right?
I do, yeah. I went to school for video production and digital media. I loved everything media. I loved audio, and I played guitar back in the day and made all my recordings on my own. And I loved video production and music videos and commercials and short films and documentaries. And I was just like, I just love to see, I just love to see things come to life. And so I thought I was going to be the next like super music video director or Scorsese or something. And after spending a couple of days on set in production, I realized, man, this is not for me. It was 16, 17-hour days where you're just carrying around a bunch of different equipment. And it was exhausting. And I kind of realized while I was on the side making a little bit of money from just making web projects, that I was like, I actually kind of like that, where nobody's bugging you and you can just kind of work and get focused in. And it was a lot easier to find those sorts of clients too at the time. So yeah, I wasn't planning on this route whatsoever, but the more that I was exposed to it, the more I kind of continued to dig and kind of fell into it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I saw, on your site when you're telling your story is you had a series of full-time jobs, but you just didn't seem to fit like anywhere. And it wasn't them, it was really you. And you kind of had that, drive to be your own boss and be your entrepreneur. And for our listeners at home, just, what are some of the reasons that went into that? And what were some of those discoveries that you made when you were, figuring out you weren't built to work for someone else, but really for yourself?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of that comes down to that I have a hard time being told what to do. And mostly because, not because, I can't listen or get feedback or anything like that, which I think is incredibly important, but I just don't like being told like, okay, today you're going to do this, this, and this, and your job is not done until those three things that I've assigned to you are accomplished. And for me, I hear that kind of thing and I'm like, oh, that's not why I got into this. Like I got into building websites specifically because I like to see my ideas, my creations come to life. And it was the same for video production and music and when I was in the band and all that stuff, where I just like to build things and see them come to life. And so that was kind of this reoccurring theme. Obviously, if you have a boss, you don't really have a choice in a lot of that matter. But yeah, so I would have jobs where I was just working on things that I wasn't necessarily passionate about. And yeah, when I come up with all these excuses of maybe the commute is too far, or maybe there was a certain coworker that I didn't really get along with. But really, ultimately, what it came down to was when I moved to Chicago for a couple of years, I had what I had thought was the perfect dream job. I was working with some really good friends. I was in a super cool West Loop of Chicago studio. We had pinball machines in there. It was like it was a great atmosphere. I could ride my bike to work. And I was really thrilled to have that opportunity, but there was still something kind of gnawing at me that was like, is this how you want to be spending your time? Don't you have these bigger things that you want to do? And I always had these side projects that I wanted to spend more time on, but I didn't want to be working my entire, sunrise to sunset sort of thing. So, it was eventually, I think at that point where I was like, okay, there's something else that's bigger that's going on here where you are in this perfect situation, but you're also have something that's telling you that maybe you need to switch things up. So yeah, there was just all these little signs here and there that maybe the full-time environment, the traditional full-time environment isn't necessarily for me. I used to call that unemployable, but also that's probably not perfectly true. If I was completely unemployable, then I wouldn't even be able to employ myself. So there's some sort of mix that needs to work out for me. And I think right now it's going all right. So.
Yeah, definitely. So when you made the jump to being a full-time entrepreneur for yourself, how did that come about? Was a gradual process or was it all at once?
I had a couple of attempts at that, I guess. And I should say 2 attempts at it. One was a failed attempt that I learned a lot from, where I went cold turkey and just quit my job to pursue an idea that I had. And that was a fun journey and a fun story that I learned a lot from. But the second time around, I thought maybe there was a better approach for me where I didn't feel like I was sacrificing a whole lot to make that transition. So the way that worked was the client that I was working for at the time had this need for a specific project on his site. And the way I kind of talk about this is when I'm writing code, I don't like to code into a corner. Or in other words, I don't like to provide solutions that are only going to apply for one specific company or client. I like to try to make it as broad as possible so that anybody else can take that same library or module or whatever and plug it into their own site and reuse a lot of that same functionality, because we're all human, right? We have these similar needs and businesses and all that. So that was a discussion that I had with that particular client where I said, hey, we might be better off doing this as an open source plugin thing so that in the future, maybe there's other developers that could jump in and easily contribute to it or learn how all of this stuff works. It doesn't feel so hacked together for your specific needs, but it's polished and it has an admin, and there are ways to easily manage this kind of thing. And when you describe it that way, they're all about it. I mean, which I think is a great business decision. And I'm a huge believer in open source software. So that was kind of how it started off. And then there was some premium functionality that I thought maybe this open source project, and specifically it was for video portfolios for Vimeo or video galleries for Vimeo. And there's a couple of opportunities for premium functionality in that sort of setup. So I tried to just kind of slap a price tag on some premium features, and eventually I noticed that people would pay me $4 for it, which was awful pricing at the time. But at the time, it was super cool to think that I made $4 and I wasn't trading it one-to-one for somebody. It was just on a website somewhere. So I kind of paid a little bit more attention to that in my free time, and eventually it just kind of snowballed into something that overcame what I was getting paid in my full-time job. And so at that point, I think everything kind of came together, and I was just ready to pursue it on my own full-time.
That one was Vimeography? Yeah,
Vimeography, yeah.
Cool. So once you got a taste of building like a premium plugin, and as you said, it started with just getting $4 for that plugin. Were you then kind of looking for the next place where you could create a solution that would not be for just one person, but would be able to scale? And how did that evolve from there?
Yeah, I kind of pursued that for a while, and I tried, that was like the perfect opportunity for me to play around with pricing and play around with marketing and all of these things that I've always watched other people do, but I never had the opportunity to actually implement for myself and play around with. So, and it was so low risk because if I made these changes and it didn't work, all I had to do was either change it back, right? And I can kind of go back to square one where I was with this thing. And I always had the opportunity to pick up on full-time work. And I think that's probably another thing that a lot of folks that are thinking about maybe getting into their side project overlook or forego is if it doesn't work out, you've cultivated your skill set and your talents far enough where you can easily pick up more work in the future. So that was like kind of a no risk thing for me to always just be playing around and toying with these things and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I really just enjoyed that entire process. So along the way, I think I kind of picked up on things that I liked to do and that I was good at after kind of crafting or honing that craft a bit and figuring out where the market is. But I think ultimately the one thing that's missing from that project for me is where does this fall on the scale of importance to me personally and to kind of the world around me and the community that I'm involving myself in. So I think that's where I start thinking about bigger projects that can continue to scale, not only for a bigger market, but based on the fact that it has a greater impact on those around me.
Excellent, excellent. So, I've noticed that you have a couple premium plugins that are part of other people's ecosystems. For example, the Vimeo uploader in Ninja Forms, and in the EDD world, you have the MailChimp add-on. So how did these partnerships come about? Did you just reach out to these people or did they approach you? How did that evolve?
Yeah, those were all, so I was kind of early on in terms of doing third-party development for a lot of the other big plugins that you're mentioning, but I think that's kind of where that happened. So when I was selling this Vimeography product, when I first started off selling it, I actually had written my own store, and I always joked that it was probably the other EDD that could have existed. And I'm personally glad that I didn't continue to pursue that, but it was about maybe 12 months, 6 to 12 months in development when I found Pippin's project for Easy Digital Downloads right alongside where I was building. And I was always frustrated because I didn't want to spend time building the store. I wanted to spend time on my idea. And once I saw that happen, I was like, oh, this is a natural switch to go into the EDD lane. And this was 2012 or whatever. So this was early on where the add-ons model was still what at least Pippin was pursuing. I think Ninja Forms is still doing that kind of stuff. But it's the same thing where I would just run into things along the way that I wanted to see in the store. And I realized that they didn't have the add-ons already built for that sort of thing. So I just opened up conversation with Pippin and with the folks at Ninja Forms and said, hey, this is what I'm building for me. I think it could apply to other people as well, which is kind of the approach that I take on most of the products that I work on. And is this something that is interesting to you? And a lot of that stuff was kind of just a natural fit. So back in 2012, a lot of that stuff just got adapted as third-party plugins that we, again, just tried to work with a commission model and slap a price tag on it and see what happens. So yeah, there was no real conversation behind it. That was this whole structured thing. It just kind of naturally fit as, okay, let's give this a try. And it's had enough legs to continue to be effective here in 2017. So.
Perhaps your most famous plugin or your flagship plugin, I should say, is the Lunchbox, where you have basically an LMS plugin, but it's specifically geared toward hosting video content in video courses. Now, how did this come about? Was this a long-standing idea that you had, or? Yeah,
it has been, and mostly because having the video production background and getting into all this code stuff, this is how I learned, was just breaking Google, just searching the same similar questions over and over again until I eventually understood, oh, that's what this means, or that's how this works. And YouTube and watching video. And so it's kind of this mishmash of having the video production background, having a passion for online education, and wanting to do something that had this greater impact on the people that I was surrounding myself with. And even those that I didn't know or just met yesterday, whatever. So this was something that has always kind of been in the back of my mind, as I'd love to teach and share what I just learned. And so I thought I would try my hand and my approach on what online learning interface might look like in WordPress specific to video production. So, or using video as the means of teaching. So that I actually started working on that in 2014, and I had a couple of technical barriers that I ran into where I wasn't sure what I wanted to use or how I wanted to build it. And ultimately all that did was just slow things down. So at a certain point, I just decided this is the approach I'm going to take. Let's move forward with this. Let's learn as much as possible. And the objective there is I am kind of my first customer, where the plan is to continue to use that platform to build my own video courses moving forward. So I'm working on one right now that helps teach React, which is Facebook's JavaScript library. And that will help, hopefully, WordPress plugin developers to be able to understand how this shift into the new era of JavaScript is going to have a huge impact on development moving forward, specific to WordPress and the React changes and the Gutenberg project and all that stuff. So so I wanted to teach on my own, and I wanted to also provide a solution that works for other people that are part of this course ecosystem, I guess. So that's been something that's been moving for quite a while now. And I'm super excited about that moving forward and continuing to support it and build on it.
Excellent. We're going to go for our break, and then when we come back, we're going to be talking more with premium plugin author Dave Kiss. See you in just a second. We're coming back from our break, and we're talking more with premium plugin author Dave Kiss. Jonathan, did you have a question for Dave?
No, it's just been fascinating, all the things. Do you ever sleep, actually?
Do I sleep? I do sleep. I advocate sleep. And what happens ultimately is that I just like to share everything that I do. And so everything that I work on I'm always talking about it, and I'm always sharing it. And so it might sound like I'm just this, super prolific thinker or whatever, but really I'm just trying. I love to try new things, and I love to see where I could take them. But yeah, I sleep, I go to bed early and I wake up. No, I wouldn't say early, but I get plenty of sleep, and I recommend that to other people as well.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
It's pretty, there seems to be, obviously your background in film and video, and like, as you were discussing things with John, the main things that you're well known in the WordPress community seems to be around plugins around video, using video for education. Do you think you're going to continue that kind of, or am I wrong? But there seems to be that kind of linkage that it's around WordPress plugins, video, if you understand what I mean.
Sure. Yeah. Video is just this really fun, creative, important medium to me. I'm always just amazed by the way that a film or a video can just evoke emotion and provoke change and thought. And so, that's always going to be important to me moving forward. Also, it's just a lot of fun. Like, you can be so creative with it. So for example, when I was working on the Vimeography project, just getting that started, it was so cool to build galleries. And so I would use Vimeo.com. They have a channel, which is just a collection of videos. They have a collection called staff picks, right? So their staff would go through and choose their favorite films that are being uploaded to Vimeo. Not even films, but documentaries and whatnot. So when I was building the gallery plugin, I would use the staff picks as the source, as the where should this gallery pull videos from. And it automatically updates just constantly. So anytime a new video would be posted to staff picks, it would be thrown in front of me. And while I'm working, I see, oh, there's this new video that's available, let's watch it. And it was such an awesome experience to be able to be exposed to all of this creativity while I was actually working on a product at the same time. So that was a lot of fun. Video is extremely important to me. So the other interesting half of that question is, what about WordPress? And so I just think WordPress, I'm not a tech specific guy whatsoever. I think what it comes down to is what's the right tool for the job. What do you know? What do you know how to use? What do you think is going to be the easiest for your client to use? And it took a little while for me, I think, to figure that out. But I specifically use WordPress because I think that it has the obvious business benefits because of how many people are actually using it. And it's like a quarter of the web or whatever. So that's hard to ignore. It's always had this really easy learning curve, which made it easy for me to get involved in it and try to figure out how all this stuff kind of worked. And yeah, I just think that I am taking advantage of the fact that it has just been a really natural process. So I think I'm going to continue to build on that moving forward. I've also, I have made some attempts at some Ruby on Rails projects and some Go stuff. And so again, it's not really about the tech for me. It's just what isn't going to enable you to be able to move your project forward. And for right now, that's WordPress for me.
So with this React course, are you planning in developing more courses in the WordPress, world of training? Is that also a plan?
It's an interesting question. I think I'm going to try to use this first course as kind of a pilot program to see how WordPress specific stuff does. Because again, React can be applied anywhere. It doesn't have to be WordPress. I'm just kind of focusing in what I'm working with right now, which is WordPress. So, and I try to scope that down to where I think, there's definitely this void. There's a couple of good articles that I've seen written recently, actually. But there's this void about how does this stuff all play in? We've been doing things for so long a certain way in WordPress, and now all of a sudden, you're not going from A to, C tech. You're going to A to like T or V or something. So it's a completely different paradigm. And there's certainly going to be a lot of training that's required in that realm and how it plays into JavaScript. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how this one goes. I have some other courses that I've been working on. That's just a general, like, here's how to use some Redux libraries, and here's how to solve a specific problem just with JavaScript. And those have been a lot of fun for me too. And I guess we'll see what happens.
Have you got any tips or insights for people trying to build a training course with video? Because I love your feedback, because I'm in the middle of doing that myself, actually.
Oh,
so
okay, cool.
It's a totally selfish question, but I thought you'd be the guy to ask for got any tips or insights about how you should approach it, planning, anything like that?
Sure thing. Well, you got two things going for you right now. You're looking good. You got your microphone, professional microphone. Got a little bit of lighting, nice lighting there. So all of this, the visuals are very important. I'm sure you've come across this like crummy YouTube video at some point while you were just learning something or stumbling across somebody else's playlist, and you're just kind of like, this is almost unwatchable because I can't really hear what he's saying, and maybe the lighting's off, or you don't see the person's face when they're talking, which is huge. Like, you want to know that you're participating with somebody one-on-one and it feels like they're talking to you, right? So that is definitely a plus. Also, keeping your videos shorter rather than longer. There's a lot of statistics on this, so I won't go into too much detail, but right around the 2-minute mark is right where viewership starts going boop, because you don't know what's going to happen at any moment. Like, I have a door over here and maybe my dog figures out a way to knock it down. And so as somebody that would be watching a video, that means I gotta cancel this out and fix the door now. Or maybe the baby's crying, or maybe, I forgot the ramen noodles are boiling over or whatever. So yeah, keeping those in kind of these bite-sized chunks rather than doing a 30-minute tutorial on how to, mow the grass or whatever, which hopefully it's shorter than that. But these little bite-sized pieces are much easier to consume and then pick back up at a later time in case of any sort of a interruption or short attention span.
So would you recommend, like, if you had a reasonably large subject that that you could break up into chapters, but that chapter you'd be better off having, like, breaking the videos up into like 3 to 5 minute bits rather than in a 20-minute video? per chapter?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, you look like you were planning to have it's part of a series, and video one is 20 minutes in length because of the material you're covering, but you would be better off breaking that video one into 4 bits of 5 minutes each.
Yeah, absolutely. I think breaking it down, and then that's part of the plan with the Lunchbox plugin for video moving forward, is to be able to set chapter markers as well. So maybe you do have just one long recording, but it's still in a way chunked up if you set chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And that way, once you hit that as almost like a milestone in the video, you have now completed chapter 1 of that 20-minute long video, and it's still the same idea or the same method, right? So yeah, as long as there's ways that provide these natural break points along the way where it's easy to pick things back up. We're not watching a Stranger Things episode where you want to just sit through all the way and regardless of what's happening, or you can pause it and just play it back and you kind of remember what's happening. A lot of times the stuff is really in depth, and you really need to, in order to retain it, you need to be able to go back and watch it and say, oh, what did he say again at 2:12 or whatever. So being able to kind of chunk that into little bits and providing natural points for other people to jump in and pick back up is definitely a good idea.
So your course about React, you were hinting that it's like a big jump, and that's from you, a experience. It's not many people that build commercial WordPress plugins. So what do you see some of the key challenges from somebody that's recently experiencing WordPress development moving to React?
Wow. Yes, that's the question. There's a lot that's going on that's different. So we're so used to kind of this jQuery world where you slap a script tag somewhere. I mean, who knows where? It could be in your footer. It could be output from a functions.php file. Like there's been no structure there's definitely best practices, but there's been no traditional structure to the only way that this is going to work is if you do it this way, right? So the other part of that is managing your state, or managing what's going on in the application. And a lot of the times, if you're using something just like jQuery, you are managing all of the deciding factors of how your application is presented right within the actual structure of your code. So in the tree, like in the DOM tree. So a particular element might have a class that says is highlighted or something like that. But that's the only place that it actually mentions that element or header or something has a blue background, So there's this whole shift, that's saying now we don't want all of that information to be living inside of just a class somewhere. That shouldn't be what's deciding the truth of what the state of our application is, or all this data. And maybe you're hearing a lot about that if you have been doing any sort of research in JavaScript, is this whole this one source of truth idea where it's abstracted now. No longer should that be within your source code of the DOM tree, but it's got to live somewhere else. And then all of the elements on your page can listen to that source or that store and say, whatever that thing's telling me to do, I'm just going to show that. So no longer do we have just this mess of selectors and this whole, this very unmaintainable. So if we keep all of that in one place rather than where it really shouldn't belong and how we've been doing things for a while, then it'll make things a lot easier. So yeah, maybe that was probably a little bit more technical than I wanted to talk there, but there's a hugely different paradigm, big paradigm shift here. And I think that's just going to trip a lot of people up because it's a completely different approach on from where we've been writing JavaScript. And there needs to be the people that are able to translate from, okay, I already understand how this newer stuff works. Now I need to go back and help other people that need to cross this chasm and make sure that I can still use the language that they're still thinking in order to bring them to where I am. So I think it's extremely important for folks, especially that just learn it, to share what they know as soon as they learn it, because they still remember the questions that they had formulating in their head while they were learning this stuff. Maybe you still remember even the Google searches that you were sending away, and you can kind of communicate in the same fashion to beginners that are right behind you. So yeah, there's a lot to learn here and a lot to cover. And that's kind of the objective with this course, is to provide all of that for anybody interested.
Oh, I thought you did a fantastic job, Dave. And go to Dave's website and learn some more about it. But I thought that was fantastic. I think we're going to come in. I'm going to turn it over to John to see if he's got one more question, and then we'll probably end the podcast and go on for about 10 minutes with some bonus content. Over to you, John.
Yeah, my final question for the regular podcast, Dave, is to you is, what's on the horizon for Dave Kiss in the rest of 2017 and 2018? Any projects that we should be on the lookout for?
Sure. Yeah. So I have, the React course is reactforwp.com. I have the Lunchbox plugin, which if you're looking to do any sort of video course as an entrepreneur, a self-starter, or a professional, that's at WPLunchbox.com. Mimeography is something that I'm continuing to pursue and do a little bit of refactoring the code there. And then if I didn't have enough to do, I'm also starting a local organization called Code Cleveland, which is basically all about bringing the smart people together in the Cleveland area as an entry point for, where do we go to talk about this stuff? So we have, especially here in the Cleveland area, we have JavaScript meetup groups, and we have Ruby meetup groups and WordPress meetup groups, and they're all kind of these fragmented little bubbles and islands that are doing their own thing. There's no natural entry point for somebody that might just be learning, like, what is a Slack, or what is a code, like they don't even know what JavaScript even means. And so I'd like to provide an entry point that says, okay, here you are, you're in the community now, come hang out, grab a beer or whatever. And now somebody you can start asking some more general questions. And eventually, once you pick up a little bit of skill and a little bit of traction, you can filter down to these individual meetup groups. So again, community is really big to me. It's something that I've always wanted to pursue a little bit further. And so I'm going to try to structure that here in the Cleveland area. And that's called Code Cleveland. It's codecleveland.org.
Sweet. We will definitely have to check that out. It sounds like an excellent idea. And with that, where can we find you online, Dave?
I am probably most active on Twitter, just Dave Kiss. Yep, like the band, DAVEKISS. And you can always email me, dave@davekiss.com. And that's my website as well.
Sweet. Jonathan, how do we get a hold of you?
It's really easy, folks. You can get me on Twitter at Jonathan Denwood. You can email me at jonathan@wp-tonic.com. I always try and answer my email, probably not straight away, but if you've got a question or a suggestion for the show, it's much appreciated. And how can people get a hold of you, John?
Well, they can find me at my website, which is lockdowndesign.com. They can follow me on Twitter at lockdown_, or find my Facebook page. Just go on there and search for Lockdown Design. For the WP-Tonic posse, in effect, we're saying peace out and get your dose.
I just love it. He always did that.
That was cool.
That was cool. He always does a good ending.
Yeah.
I'm too English. I just say goodbye. BBC.
Yeah.
This is WordPress from the BBC. Goodbye. Yeah. See you next week.
I like that too. Nice and simple. Succinct.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. So we'll just continue for a little while, for about 5-10 minutes. Is that okay? We use this as extra bonus content for the YouTube channel. Dave, I see you're really passionate about what you do, but do you, and I have this worry, do you have a worry that you're a bit fragmented, that you're moving from one project to the other and really you should just concentrate on one thing? Or is that not possible because your mind, you need multiple things to keep you going, really?
Yeah, both of those are true, actually. So I think what I learned about just what I'm pursuing, what I like to pursue, is when I was in high school, I would do, work on a band stuff. And then I'd do poster design, I'd do t-shirt design, and then I'd do a website, and then I'd do a video. And I just loved creating. But I realized at that point it was just like, this is way too much, because those skills, while they were complementary to a business, they weren't complementary skills that were close enough together to be able to really be effective in all of those different areas. Versus now, where a lot of the things that I'm working on, I'll write React in Mimeography, and then I'll write React in Lunchbox, and then I'll teach about React in the course, and I'll use React as something that I might talk about locally in the community. And so, yes, there's a lot of different projects going on, but they're all very closely tied together based on the tech that I'm using or the topic that I'm talking about. So yeah, I do need variety. I can't just be somebody that's working on the same thing for 5 years straight. I get very dispassionate about projects very quickly, and I always like to supplement that with just other things that have some momentum. So
one thing I've learned the hard way, and is that marketing is crucial. Having a technically a service, a plugin that does the job that it's supposed to do without loads of bugs, and solving a problem are all important. But if nobody knows about it, it's a bit of a problem, isn't it? So what have you learned about how to market your plugins, and any kind of insights, tips for somebody that's thinking of going down a similar road that you've gone down?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Like, how do we get traffic? How do we build an audience? How do we get people to care? And people are spending hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars to figure all this out. For me, the only thing that's ever worked is authenticity, and build trust, and have these conversations, and get involved in the community. Free and open source software, and contribute to that, because you're making a name for yourself as, oh, that's the guy that did that, or she was working on that local meetup thing, whatever. So there's all of these opportunities to, instead of just go up to you guys, like I could go up to you and say, hey, here's my thing, you should go check it out, plus I'll give you a 10% discount code. Well, I mean, how does that make you feel? You're like, oh, that guy is just, all he cares about is making a sale. Well, that's not true. So I think naturally, if you build your audience and build that trust, which is, there's no shortcuts to that. You have to engage, and you need to be authentic about it. And at a certain point, now that somebody trusts you, you can share what you're working on and say, I'd love for you to give this a shot, if it helps you. And if it doesn't, here's 10 other projects that might be interesting to you. So it's always just been give away as much as I can for free, without any real expectation of what I'm going to get in return. And naturally, based on that, and sharing everything I know and sharing my projects, there's been kind of this audience that's been slowly gaining momentum and working for me. So yeah, I don't know. There's no real great answer to that. Other people will tell you, spend thousands of dollars on Facebook ads. So I don't know. That's up to you.
Well, I think, you've covered two really important areas: credibility, and proving in a way that you're a serious player in whatever sector you're trying to play with. And that doesn't happen overnight, does it?
Sure doesn't. No, this has been, for me, it's been a decade-long process. But the great thing about that is your efforts today are, especially, I mean, if they're positive efforts, obviously, are only going to work great for you moving forward. So if you're writing blog posts 10 years ago, well, aren't you happy now that you have this backlog of 10 years of incredible content that you've been working on, and the momentum is only going to continue to build in a positive manner?
Got any questions, Sean?
Nah, I think we're good.
You think you're good? Well, so we're going to wrap it up, folks. Dave's been a fantastic guest. Go and look at his products and his services. It's really high quality, and just, like I say, I don't think he sleeps, actually. I don't believe.
I do.
You don't. You're one of these that's working 18 hours a day.
That's not true.
Well, I'm only defending myself because I feel I'm looking for the right words. Shallow compared to your efforts. So we'll see you next week for another episode of WP-Tonic. See you later, folks. Bye.
Bye-bye.